Welcome everybody from the Sparx Systems YouTube channel. It's great to have you join us today. We're continuing to look at our urban parking system repository, and today we're going to be looking at diagram layout. My name's Scott Hubbard and I'm joined by Stephen Maguire. Welcome, Stephen. What can you tell us about the diagram layout capabilities within Enterprise Architect?
Thanks for the introduction, Scott, and delighted to be here. Yeah, we are going to talk about how a user can make their diagrams look more polished, neater, and easier for an audience or a viewer, to understand them and comprehend the narrative that they're trying to describe. So models are all about communication. In this exercise, I don't really need to set my perspective, but I'm going to set it to UML modeling. So we're going to look at a structural diagram. So I'll do that. The tool changes its focus to UML structural modeling. I'm going to close the builder page. That is a page that comes up that's got all sorts of patterns on it. It allows us to start quickly. I want to do things from first principles. So I'm going to close that builder page, but I say to people, please return to this builder page and the patterns, and you can get great productivity gains from using that. Let's do things from first principles though. Let's look at a package and a diagram. So I'm going to open up the research package, and there's been some engineering research, and you can see that there are a number of elements that are in this package. There is a diagram defined there, the engineering research concepts diagram, and you notice that there are no elements on it, but I do have elements that are actually listed inside that package to do with engineering research. So we've got some, some things like geofencing, virtual geographic boundary technology that triggers specific actions when vehicles enter or exit designated parking zone. So the engineering team have been researching things that might be useful for this parking meter system. And now we want to put these things onto a diagram. So what I can do is I'm going to drag each one of them onto the diagram just quickly and show you. I'll just say okay to that. And I'm going to do it, I could do it all at once. I could multi-select these ones and just put them all onto the diagram. I'm just going to do it individually. I'll show you why. I'm going to lay out the diagram in a way that's, less than optimal. So I'm just going to put some elements in, various places and kind of emulating that, the work that someone's done and they haven't quite got their, got their models actually, the diagrams optimally organized. So, let's do that. And, let's put in this wayfinding system as well. So imagine you had a diagram that looked a bit like that. We'll put some things in here. And
when you dragged the occupancy detection, it already had the connectors attached, but you didn't add any connectors. Why is that, Stephen?
Yeah, Scott, good question. The modelers have done some work in the past. Maybe these elements exist on another diagram, or they've entered the relationships through a relationship matrix or something. So they exist inside the repository, and the diagram knows that those exist. Now I could delete them off that diagram if I wanted to. I want to leave them on, and just to show you that again, if I just delete that occupancy detection off the diagram and see what happens when I bring it back on again. So no connections there. I bring it back on, and those connections are all made. So, the diagram's kind of not really optimal. So what I've got up here is some options on the layout ribbon. So we've got the start, the design, the layout ribbon, and we've got some, different panels here. And one of them is this tools panel. So with filters and layers, pan and zoom. We've seen, pan and zoom before, where we can move around a diagram and, come in and out of a diagram if we want to. But the thing we want to look at today is the, let me just put that one back again, and we'll put that one back to that. So what we want to look at today is these layout options. Now I've got these options here, and I can just, apply them here. So let's just hit this box one. This one looks like it might be sensible. And you can see that puts the lines into the elements into a box kind of shape. Now there's some lines crossing there, and so that might not be the optimal thing to do. So let's have a look at some other options. So let's have a look at the circle option here, and again, quite useful, but we have some lines crossing. But not to worry, we kind of talk about the crossing lines in a minute. But all sorts of different options there. I've got an ellipse, a circle, a box, an auto route. Let's say take that auto route one, and you can see now that those routes
the lines don't cross.
Yeah, no lines that cross there. We can look at other ones and we can say, per page, and we've got that going on. Very easy to change those if I want to, but like I said, I'm going to show you some other ways of doing this. So, we can quickly, change those connectors if we want to. But let's put this back. I'm going to hit the Control Z and undo all the changes that I've made. So I'm just going back through that. Now there it is there. I'm going to open up the layout. So open the diagram layout tool, and you can see down in the bottom right-hand corner now, I've got this layout tools. This gives me the same options that I had before, but this time I've got more options. So, for example, I've got the box one, and I've got other things that give me options to change the way that the layout works. So automatically distribute, specify distribution, the number of columns. So, let's just say that we want 2 columns instead of 4, and then I can do that. And now I can see what my layout looks like, and it's in 2 columns. And I say, look, I don't really, like that much. I'm going to go for 4 columns, and I'll just undo that for a minute. And then there's an undo button there, and I can apply that. And that's looking a lot better. There'd just be one line that I might want to change there. And then let's do this this one here that says auto route there, and you can see that I've effectively done that auto route. That's why I was not worried about it before showing you earlier on. We can do that. So lots of different options there, and those layout options. There's a range of different things. I want to show you something, Scott, that you can see what actually happened. I applied one layer, and then I applied another one on top of that. So they're kind of additive, if you like. Like, you do something and you get it looking a particular way, then you go, that's great, but my connectors are not correct. So I can do different things. Let's have a look at one more of these, the fan relations, and let's do that one. And this one says that you need to select an element on the diagram. So let's select an element, and let's make it this occupancy detection one, and let's apply that fan relations one. And you can see now that that's fanned those out to the fan edge to the right, incoming outgoing nodes. So we can make all the padding, we can change the area, and all sorts of other things. If we do the box one again, I can change the sort by and say, look, I want it to be by name ascending. So I want it to be in alphabetical order, if you like. Let's do that. And you can see that now it's put it into alphabetical order. And again, I can just say, look, I want to auto route my connectors, do that. And, I've applied those things. So the question comes up then is, there's a bit of experimenting to do. And the experimenting is because as a user or as a team or an organization, you may prefer different types of diagram layouts. So the experimenting is just to say, look, what things do you prefer? Would you prefer? And having done that, what you can do is you can save these things, Scott. So if you look over here, there's a little icon here. It says edit layout chains. So the word chains gives you a little bit of a clue as to what's happening here. It brings up a layout chains window. And what this allows me to do is to create a sequence, if you like, of things that I'm going to apply.
You can kind of stack things on top of one another.
Exactly, a little bit like those old encyclopedias. If you've ever seen one of those in a museum, or you're old enough to know what they are, you stack up like layers of transparencies on top of each other, and you build up a picture. So let's go new chain there, and let's call it anything we like, but let's call it data modeling, because that might be something that we need to do layout for. And data modeling diagrams can get quite complex, and the connectors representing referential integrity and foreign keys and things can get quite messy if you're not careful and taking care of it. So let's go okay to that. Now let's just drag on some things. So we're going to go box there. I'm going to say I want a box one first, and then I'm going to say, look, we did notice that that auto route was quite a useful one. So let's put auto route on now. And then let's do another one which doesn't have a huge a structural effect, but just tidies some edges up and things. So I'm going to go Neaten there. I'm going to save that, save change. And you notice I can change the order of these things. I can select one and move it up or down with the little arrow keys. So we've saved that now. Let's go OK to that. And let's put our diagram back as it was, right.
So you're just hitting Control Z there to undo.
I'm hitting Control Z there. I could have hit this undo button here as well, but I'm a bit of a keyboard user, Scott, and I'm sorry that doesn't come across particularly well in the video. So thank you for that. So we've got that now. Now, how do we get to our chain? If we look down in the drop down now, you can see that data modeling is
on the bottom.
It's in the bottom there. So it's one of the ones that we can use. It doesn't have any options for it because it's a user-defined one. And let's now apply that. And you can see now that that's done the work. It's laid out those boxes, and the diagram looks neat. So you could chain any number of these if you wanted to, and that would be a useful thing to do. So lots of options there. Let's have a look at some other things. I'm just going to drag on a help page, Scott, because this is a useful thing to do, and I'm just going to drag that onto that monitor, and it explains some of these things just to show people that they are able to choose these options and get some information about how they work. So that's the help page there, and let's have a look here. We can see that there's circular, elliptical layouts. It talks about all of those things there, and it talks about depth first searching and things. So let's have a look at just a couple of them. We've got this options here. We can look at this. So to configure the settings, right click on a diagram, properties, diagram, set layout style. So it appears that there are a number of other things that we can do other than just the things that we've done. So let's have a quick look at that. Right click on the diagram, the properties, the diagram, set layout style. So I want people to, the thing that you should glean from this is the very usefulness of the help system in, when you're using tools or features that you may not have a lot of experience with. So we'll go follow the prompt. It says that, and we go to the diagram node, and there it said set layout style. Right. So now you've got a whole lot of more options that are applying at the diagram level.
They've got fine-grained control over how the layout options actually work.
Yeah, and you can see this one here. I've set this one to aggressive. This is crossing reduction option. So how much work the engine does to ensure that there are no crossing lines. So I've gone aggressive there because I think it works best to try and stop any lines crossing. We've got these initialize options, depth first search outward, depth first search inward, all sorts of other options. I'm not going to talk about those in detail, Scott. There's a help button there. I encourage everyone to press it and to start looking at some of these options and how they might work best for your organization. So remember always that we do have the option of using just manual layout, because I can just move elements like this, and if I move this out of the way, this was over here, I can simply drag it back, and using these automatic alignment tool, you can see that now that is aligned horizontally and vertically, and therefore it's back in its position. And remember, if I wanted to, I can change these connectors myself as well, so I can do that manually, and I can put that one in there like that, and that. So even after
if someone was new to modeling, there are features there that will make the diagram look tidy based on tried and true practices.
Exactly, Scott. But no technology is ever perfect, and you might get a layout that someone might think is perfect, but you have to just want to change things a little bit. So even after you've applied the layout, you do have that option of just going in and just configuring a few things manually if you want them in a particular style. So lots and lots of options there, and the result will be great looking diagrams, and you can remember the difference between this. If I'm just hitting that key there, you can remember how how different this is to what we started with.
Yeah.
Okay. So incredibly useful, Scott, and I encourage people to explore and experiment with it and come up with some options that are very useful for your organization.
That's fantastic, Stephen. It's great to see how powerful that tool is and how quickly it can be used to apply to various diagrams. And it's great that you can save those chains and be able to reuse them. So that's fantastic. I'd like to thank our audience for joining us today. As always, if you've liked this video, we'd love you to like, comment, and subscribe to the Sparx Systems YouTube channel. We always appreciate your feedback, and we love when our customers join the Sparx Systems YouTube channel so they can hear the latest and greatest about products such as Enterprise Architect, ProLaborate, and Pro Cloud Server. Stephen, once again, appreciate your time and expertise. It's been great seeing how the layout tools work in Enterprise Architect. Thanks for your time.
Always a pleasure, Scott.